My name is Martiqua, and we're here to continue our discussion about information related to hate crimes against transgender people in These hate crimes cover the entire country, and they are very painful to listen to, very painful to share, and very hard to retain the information for. And despite that, I encourage you to gather this information, hold on to it, and find ways to use it to seek change in the transgender community and beyond, so that we can affect change as a community and try to avoid the loss of life that we demonstrate here through these examples. We are here to celebrate the names of these individuals and the lives of these individuals as if we were doing a naming ceremony, a calling of the names, a reading of the names, much as an activist community might do. And Dr. Kelly is here to continue that presentation for us, share this really painful information.
Well, as I had stated in our last show, that most transgender people, when they are killed, murdered, it's done up close, very personal, and usually mutilation. So let's go on. Our next one is Rivera Renee in Grand Rapids, Michigan, August 14, 2004. She had her throat cut and died. Mickey Wardell Smith, Washington, D.C., shot 10 times. She was only 19 years old. Bella Evangelista, this is in Washington, D.C. She's a popular entertainer there, and she played at Club Chaos. And she was shot multiple times at close range. The fella that admitted to the murder but claims it was self-defense. Police do not believe his story and are treating the murder as a hate crime. Nikki Nicholas, this was in Green Oak Township, that's Ann Arbor, Michigan. She was a 19-year-old African-American trans woman, and she was making a living as a female impersonator at nightclubs around Detroit, and was well known for her impersonations of the singer Beyonce, I think I'm saying that right. Her body was discovered during a routine property check of an abandoned farmhouse. Michelle Byrne, Nashville, Tennessee, tortured for several hours, then beaten to death and beheaded by 2 men. Her body, minus its head, hands, and feet, was found floating in the Cumberland River. And the person that did this was given a life term. Benjamin Scott Ray, she was also known as Benderella. That was her nickname in the transgender community. Maddie Clark in the news commented, she had written this article about Ben Ray. It says, in early 1977, I met Ben for the first time. It was at her home. And I was brought there by a friend of mine. She was a gracious hostess and was able to make extremely shy young female to male feel comfortable. During the tour of her home to look at antiques and how she felt, well, she had collected all these over 38 years, these antiques.
Wow.
And she talked about wishing how she could get SRS, but how she felt it was out of the question. She could never pass. She had water on the brain as a newborn, and her skull was misshapen because of this. So finding wigs were really tough for her. Anyway, that was one of the things that she had told her that night. In July, she was dead, having been murdered by a 20-year-old soldier who used she told me she was a real woman. Of course, I freaked out and found out it wasn't true. That was the defense that was used. She only served 20 months in prison for killing her.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Tyra Hunter, Washington, D.C. This is a despicable case. She received inadequate care from the D.C. General Hospital and from the medical team on the scene of an accident. This was on August 8, 1995. She was injured in a automobile accident. And when the ambulance drivers came to try to get her out of the car, they found out that she was still an intact male and began laughing at her. She received inadequate care and died because of this. And currently her mother is suing on this. The next one is Brandon Tina, or Tina Brandon. This is a female to male transsexual. And she was discovered by these two guys and raped. And when she went to the police, they told her if she ever went to the police, they'd kill her. She went to the police department about it and the sheriff's office, and these guys weren't picked up right away. And instead, they hunted her down, found her in a farmhouse, and killed her. I believe they stabbed her and also shot her. And I was giving this presentation to one of my inspectors when he realized, when he saw the picture, he says, "My God, that's my cousin." He didn't even know she had been killed. Cameron Tina Tanner, San Francisco, died as a result of wounds suffered when attacked by two individuals with baseball bats. She was beaten to death. Maxwell Confate, Catford, England. This is out of the country, but it's interesting because this doesn't just happen in the United States. This happens in other foreign countries. Right. She was burned alive by 3 teenagers. Alan Walker, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I was in Fayetteville. I gave a presentation there in December of last year. This person was beaten and strangled to death. And when the body was discovered 3 days after the murder, KKK was scrawled in blood on a closet door in Walker's home, and the tires were slashed on Walker's vehicle. They were both convicted to life in prison. Stella Essie, Chicago, Illinois, hit in the head with a sledgehammer. What a way to go. The guy got 40 years in prison for that. Here's a 9-year-old boy that was killed. He was raped, hit in the head, and then drowned by I believe a 14-year-old boy. Apparently, this transgender youth, his brother was being picked on by someone, and he confronted him and beat him up, and then the other brother raped him and hit him in the head and drowned him. 9 years old. Chrissy Johnson, multiple stab wounds. She was found by police naked with her feet tied together. She had been stabbed at least 15 times and had been thrown from the 2nd floor of her apartment to the 1st. The guy that killed her told the police 4 different stories about that evening, and one version had Johnson raping him. William Battles, South Bronx, New York, beaten and sexually mutilated by members of a local street gang in 1973. Larry Van Zant, Chicago, Illinois, stabbed repeatedly and castrated. After he stabbed and castrated this guy, he placed the severed penis in his mouth and shoved him in a closet. The guy was found guilty of first-degree murder. Alana Kella, New York City, shot on her front porch. Gerald Williams, Mobile, Alabama, stabbed and slashed in the throat. 1997, November. Tracy Thompson, Cordell, Georgia. Head wounds most likely caused by beaten to death with a baseball bat. That was in 1999. Jonathan Streeter, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, shot in the face, beaten and sexually mutilated. This guy murdered this person and one other person and then burnt their bodies, but they were discovered in trash bags with their legs sawed off above the knees. Faustino Aurora was the other one that was killed too. This guy got 2 of them the same night. Let's talk about dating a transgender person and how dangerous that can be. Private Barry Winchell at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, was beaten to death, allegedly by Private Calvin Glover. And this was on July 5th, 1999. Now, Private Winchell was not a transgender person, but he was dating a transgender woman. The other soldiers found out about it, and so this one soldier beat him to death over it. And I'd like to show you a picture of the woman he was dating at the time. This is Calpurnia Adams. Beautiful woman. I don't know how anybody would read her. She's absolutely gorgeous. But if you're transgender, sometimes your past catches up to you. And when people discover that, like you say, Martiqua, they destroy what they don't understand.
Right. Can you do us a favor?
Sure.
I'd like to ask you to, you used a term that our audience might not understand. You mentioned as you held up Calpurnia's picture, I don't know how anyone could have read her. Can you tell us what that means?
Reading a transgender to determine their original birth sex. See, Calpurnia originally was male.
Okay.
And if you look at that picture and you look at her, I don't see how anybody would figure that out. To me, she looks like any other woman. She's gorgeous.
I would agree. I would agree. Thank you for explaining that term for us.
This is Christine Chappell. This was in England, and this person was drowned and beaten in the head. The next one is Terry Ann Summers, Jacksonville, Florida. She was a transgender activist in the Jacksonville area. She had been involved in efforts against a discrimination suit against Winn-Dixie. Winn-Dixie fired her because she was transgender, and she sued them. Now, apparently she was shot to death on her own front yard days after participating in a 2001 Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is, you know, the day we remember our dead. Ukiah Davis, Washington, D.C., shot multiple times. Georgiana Materia, oh, that's New England, that's New Zealand. I'm going to skip that one. Ronald Brown, Australia, stabbed to death. Was only 16 years old and widely known as a cross-dresser. Brown's body was found in this other guy's home, an up-and-coming jockey. Brown died of multiple stab wounds, presumably from a kitchen knife. So this does happen in other countries too. Here's Nicole Anderson, Hopewell, New York, bludgeoned with a claw hammer. What a horrible way to die. Roberta Morris, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, beaten with a crowbar. She was a popular transgender performer. Police initially attempted to assist her, but released her after she refused medical treatment. She was later found by a passing motorist and died in the hospital on Christmas Eve. They declared it a homicide, but it was from the wounds.
There can be no denying that this is extremely painful to listen to. And for those of you who have managed to hear all of the material we've shared so far, I applaud you for your courage and your determination, because this is very difficult even for me, sitting next to Diane as she's sharing this information with you. And I know that it's very difficult for her also.
There is another one where this fellow was dating a transgender, and his name was James Mack. And this happened in Buffalo, New York. Apparently, his friends found out he was dating a transgender, so they beat him with beer bottles. And then they sexually assaulted him with a broom handle, strangled him with an electrical cord, and since they couldn't kill him all those ways, they drowned him in a bathtub full of water. Then these heroes took his body to church and put it in a trash barrel behind the church and burned it. And that happened in January of 2001. What a horrible way to die. I mean, this is horrible. And this is just because the guy was dating a transgender. I don't know why anybody would. What difference does it make who I date to somebody else? It shouldn't. Here's another, in New York City, this Amanda Milan. She died in 2000. This happened at the Port Authority bus terminal. And she got into an argument with these two guys, and she turned her back on them to get into a cab when the guy attacked her from behind and slit her throat in front of everybody. She didn't make it to the hospital. Justin Enos, this guy died in the year 2000. He was a 54-year-old gay Native American man. He was at a party and he was dancing, but he was dancing like a girl. He wasn't transgender, but he was just doing his caricature of a woman dancing. Well, the other Native Americans felt that he danced like a girl and they didn't like it. So they ambushed him when he came out of the party. And they beat him and dragged him behind his horse, bludgeoning him with a shovel, and buried him alive with only his naked testicles and feet showing. And they went to jail for that, and they're in prison. They get a life sentence. And that's basically the end of this. I did this with GenderPack. I used a lot of their information, and I appreciate their help.
So do I. And so do we on the show. I appreciate the time that you've put into listening to all of this very painful information, but I assure you again, there is a purpose for us sharing this painful material with an audience, and that is, we are conducting a reading of the names. We are celebrating the lives of these individuals who lived outside of, supposedly outside of acceptable boxes in our society. And I encourage you to ask yourself how these horrible, terrible things can be done to fellow human beings, regardless of what your moral position or religious position might be on the existence of transgender people. However you might feel about that, I ask you, how does it affect you to hear this information? If you have questions about any of this, if you have concerns about any of it, if you just want to talk with someone about this type of information and how things like this can possibly be allowed to happen, there are resources available that you can contact. And I would like to share a little bit of that with you. We're going to make sure that we have this information at the end of the program in case you have questions, need resources, need contacts, just want someone to talk to about what we've shared with you. It was not meant to shock, it was not meant to offend, but it was meant to inform and to try to seek change. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate that. And Diane, I understand how painful this is to, I understand how difficult this is to share this presentation with an audience. And I thank you for your courage in doing so, and the work that you went through and others went through to put these presentations together for us so that we have the information collected and can share it and can enact our own reading of the names. Please participate in some way if you can. Find a way to connect with organizations to gain further information, to provide support for transgendered youth, homeless youth, and others in marginalized communities, quote unquote, and recognize that there are support systems out there. Try to connect with them, and hopefully we can see change happen and avoid more of this type of thing happening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Diane, thank you so much.